Let's talk some recruiting here. There's been breaking news. Tennessee has had a flip. Should you be concerned? Brought to you by Quality Tire Pros. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. All work is covered by nationwide warranty. Cherokee Boulevard or online at qualitytirepros.com, qualitytirepros.com. Tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports and Dave said hello. Concerns about Tennessee recruiting? Do you have any? Let's start with just the news, Caleb, if you can.
Yes, so Douglas Utu, who is an offensive lineman who was committed to Tennessee dating back to June, an offensive lineman in the 2025 class, has flipped his commitment to Oregon. He is a four-star, largely interior offensive lineman out of Vegas, Bishop Gorman High School, where Cedric Tillman came out of. He stands at 6'4", weighs 317 pounds.
Okay, I was told that he was very likely to flip. I was also told that this is not one of those situations, because I'm not going to come on here. Some other people will do that. I like to misspell stuff. And they'll tell you, oh, they ran him off and they didn't really want him. Caleb, that's both behind the scenes and from what you can see on your computer screen based off his rating, that was not the case here.
No, not at all. Tennessee wanted this kid. Glenn Ellery was going after him hard. So you're right. A lot of people have been saying it's a matter of when, not if, he will flip. The question is, what led to this? Was it just the NIL Nike money? Because let's be honest, how do you commit to Tennessee? You see how they started this season and you say, based on what you've seen them do this season, oh, I'm flipping. That doesn't make any sense, does it?
Well, I think it is NIL money. I think the Nike stuff's overblown because you got to remember Tennessee's a Nike school. So Nike can only give so much to Oregon before they start to upset other schools. Most of the great schools are Nike schools. So I think that's a little bit overblown, but there's a lot of money in that area up in the Northwest. So I don't think they're struggling to find NIL people. To me, this is just an annoyance. I think it's probably mostly about cash, but Oregon has a young, engaging coach, and I think better days or good days are ahead for them. I don't know about championship days, but I will tell you this, and I don't want to sound like I'm coming down on a young man because I made a lot of bad decisions when I was 17 and 18 and 19 and 20, 21, 22, but especially 17. This is a bad move because you're going to most help yourself for the NFL by going to the SEC. And there is just no doubt about that. I've talked to many NFL scouts that feel like the SEC is the proving grounds to be in the NFL as far as a lineman goes. And if you didn't play in the SEC, you better go to the Senior Bowl, and you might just get dominated by an SEC lineman. That's why you see a lot of the SEC guys not go to the Senior Bowl because they don't feel like they have to prove themselves. Now, if you're borderline, I think not Tyler Barron, but Barron Young, I think he went.
Byron Young,
excuse me. But I think he went. Correct me if I'm wrong. But nevertheless, I don't think this is a good move for the kid, and I think it just makes him a little bit more questionable in NFL scouts' eyes. And I'm not directly questioning his toughness or heart or anything like that. But I would also say this: if he doesn't want to compete in the SEC, then that's a red flag. Now, that being said, he could have an ailing grandmother in Eugene. I do not know the full backstory. I just know that Tennessee expected to lose him, and now they've lost him. And I don't think Tennessee could have done anything to really save that because I've been hearing it for almost a month that he was going to flip.
Okay, let me ask you this. Is the blow of going for the SEC to Oregon lessened given the fact Oregon's now in the Big Ten, so you still will face – I know it's not the SEC, but is it close enough that you'll face legit competition?
Well, that's a good argument. Yes, I hadn't thought about that. But again, okay, let's take that a step further. Is it better to play in the Big Ten now? Because if you didn't know, Did you know touchdown passes are down 22% in the NFL?
They are. I don't know, and so is passing yards, and I don't know what's going on this year. And maybe you
Well,
do.
I do. It's all cyclical. I've seen it happen 2 or 3 times because I'm old. So what's happening now is defenses have gotten too light, and you're able to run the football at them. So here in about 6 or 8 years, we'll go back the other way. Just like 3-4 goes to 4-3 and 4-3 goes to 3-4. So you could argue that given the state of the NFL, that this is a good business move. It's a very savvy moxie point by Caleb here because you're in the Big Ten, and what did they do on offense?
They ground and pound, don't they? Most of the time.
Right. So does that make you, I mean, is all things being equal, the money, the school, the facilities, if you're an offensive lineman, are you better off going to the Big Ten now instead of the SEC? I don't think so, but if I'm Ryan Day or if I'm Dan Lanning or I'm a coach in the Big Ten, I'm going to use that argument.
Well, this actually plays to what, honestly, this oddly plays to what Tennessee's offense has been through the first 4 games, hasn't it? It's the number 1 offense in the nation. Nico's numbers are pedestrian. It's because they're running the ball. And it's because they're running it so easily against, I never thought about that, but you're right. Teams have gotten so hell-bent on stopping these new passing offenses and getting the extra defender out there and things like that, that they've totally forgotten to have enough war daddies and elite linebackers up front to stop the run.
Yeah.
And
that further accentuates the difference between Sonny Dykes at TCU and Josh Heupel, because I don't think Dykes is happy winning unless he scores 50 points. I think at the end of the day, he thinks about points left on the board. I think that Josh Heupel, after the win against Oklahoma, thinks about, wow, I'm glad I didn't go for more points on the board because, guys, that game was more losable than you think. I mean, again, if Tennessee doesn't flip that turnover back on the Sooners, they easily could have lost that game.
They could have. I still maintain, unlike you, that they could have scored a couple of times in the red zone or when they approached the red zone and just chose not to because they were like, the field goal will do it for us.
Well, let's put it this way. I don't think they were ever in danger of losing it. But if they don't flip it, they have to win another way. And then it's at least a bit unknown, right? Because of the offensive tackles.
Yes. No, that's fair to say. I'm with you on that. So losing Douglas Utu to Oregon, I don't know what fully to make of it. I will say that this kind of throws in. You're right. He's out of Vegas, so maybe it's closer to home, Oregon, things like that. But this also kind of throws in the idea that recruiting is going a little bit more national now, and the style of coaching you run is important. And what is Dan Lanning trying to do, Dave? He's trying to build Oregon the way Kirby Smart built Georgia. He's a Kirby Smart protege, and he wants to build a team with those gigantic linemen up front, offensive and defensively, and build everything out from that. He's done as good of a job as you possibly can. But I mean, I think I come to your side on that. There's a ceiling. So maybe with Douglas Utu, what he's thinking is because there's a ceiling, there's more opportunity to play. Could that be it?
Could be, but I'd rather come to Tennessee. And if I proved I'm ready to play as a redshirt freshman or a sophomore, I get to play some. That's why I put that list of players that played against Oklahoma in the message board. I'd rather play some, develop my game against the best, than go to Oregon and eventually play at some point. I mean, because what Josh Heupel is doing is very unusual. And he's doing it because he has that many talented players. But you don't see people playing 12 defensive linemen in a game. I would argue right now that other than blowouts, nobody else did that in the nation.
No one does that. It's insane how deep Tennessee goes on the defensive line. But
so
on the
all things being equal, unless there's emotional tie, did Douglas Utu just Utu the bed?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, really? Listen, if you're in Vegas, you can fly to anywhere, like a straight shot, just about. So don't give me that he's West Coast and that Oregon makes a big difference. It's probably a 2.5 hour flight to Oregon. It's a 4 hour flight to Knoxville. I mean, that doesn't that doesn't carry water for me. So I don't think that was the big factor. So if he made a lot more NIL money, great. But I don't know that Tennessee would be necessarily outbid unless they just fell in love with him and offered him an incredible sum of money, or maybe he played Oregon and said Tennessee's going to give me $2 million. That's why these numbers need to be public and they need to balance out at some point. You need to know what you're spending on particular players. And I know that everybody, at least I think, knows that Lance Hurd is making a mill. I've been told he's the second highest paid player other than Nico by a good source. Now, part of that's because James Pierce doesn't like being in the public, and he's not making extra money that's there. He's making a mill too this year. But I think those numbers need to be public knowledge. These are still public institutions, Caleb. So if you want to go do your deal on your own, that's fine. Like Cooper Mays, for instance. I mean, I don't talk about what Cooper Mays gets paid. I don't think he talks about it to other people. But now that it's run through the universities, or will be next year, those numbers had better be public knowledge, right?
Oh, yeah. And also because, and if you're a school, you almost prefer they become public knowledge, because otherwise it starts to raise so many other questions, because, and those narratives affect you in recruiting elsewhere. Because Dave, let's be honest. Let's go to the NFL for a minute. A bunch of teams try to land a player. The player picks one team. Nobody comes out and says, well, what's wrong with the culture of these other teams? Why didn't he go here? No, they look at his what he was offered and like, oh, this team offered him the most money. That's why he went there. I mean, it's that simple, right? When there's a free agent in the NFL market.
True. Now, let me ask you this. I'm going to go really tinfoil hat on you. Okay. Do you think Utu saw Tennessee's young offensive tackles? Now, he started looking around about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So this is not based off the Oklahoma game. But do you think maybe he saw Tennessee's offensive tackles in Lance Hurd, who I know is a transfer and a lot's expected of him, but he's just a sophomore, and Larry Johnson III, who I do believe is going to be a very, very good player. And this guy, Utu, is the size, 6'7" where he's going to be a tackle. He doesn't need to play guard. He doesn't need to play center.
No, he's 6'4".
Oh, 6'4". Okay. Well, he's rated as an offensive tackle. Maybe he looked at Tennessee, especially with David Sanders Jr. committed, and said, I don't know that I can get in at one of those two tackle positions, kind of like a quarterback evaluates schools when they're making their decision.
No, because I still actually think he's going to be in line to fight for one of those guard spots when he goes to Tennessee. So I think there's a lot of starting options. I'm sorry?
Or would have been.
Would have been, yeah. So I think a lot of those starting options would have been there. I think it actually is more Oregon. I don't know what they promised. I don't know what they offered. Look, here's the weird part, and this is the truth. Tennessee and Oregon actually have very similar NIL collectives. For those of you who don't know, they both have. They don't just think about what we're offering up front. They think about what they can promise players on the back end, all the way down the line. The only thing I could say maybe with Oregon is that they are offering more up front, because Dave, as you know now, Tennessee is focused on offering more on the back end to players now than they are on offering up front with NIL. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if, and now here's where this gets really shaky. You just saw UNLV's quarterback decide to sit out the season. A USC player is now doing the same thing. Here's where Tennessee could have trouble with their strategy going forward. And you wonder if this is in effect. Players are going to start trusting less and less this promise of NIL money on the back end, because there's no proof that they'll be allowed that money on the back end or given that money. They're going to want something in writing at that point. And I think, could that hurt Tennessee in recruiting, Dave? Because Tennessee's strategy is, look at what we can give you on the back end if you perform. And I think a lot of players are seeing what's happening at other schools and are thinking, yeah, I'm not going to take you up on that offer that you'll pay me on the back end, because I'm not sure I trust you.
Yeah, but I think the market's going to settle itself out, where maybe Oregon loved this guy in particular and they've got a massive hole in their offensive line. I don't know them well enough. But I think that stuff settles itself out financially. I think the market will. So go ahead and I have an ask. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll take a look at Tennessee's upcoming signing class and why or why not the Vols shouldn't be worried. It's brought to you by Quality Tire Pros. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake, alignments, oil changes, and more. All work covered by nationwide warranty. Cherokee Blvd, right there, qualitytirepros.com. Also, if I may, want to remind you about our good friends at Work Trucks. We'll pull that up. But first, let's look at who Tennessee has ready to sign. David Sanders Jr., who's a higher rated player than Utu at offensive tackle. As far as other offensive linemen, they've got Nick Moore, who plays for our good friend Spencer Riley up at Jeff County. He's a 4-star kid. Don't just think local guy. Tennessee went and got a guy, and his coach is a former ball. No, that's not it. That's something the coaching staff back in the 90s and 2000s would have done. The staff isn't like that. They have Antoni Cade Agamoro, an offensive tackle who's just a 3-star. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that it's late in the recruiting cycle because of the early signing day, but Tennessee would be best suited to go out and maybe they have to throw some NIL cash. They need another elite offensive lineman in this class, right or wrong.
Yeah, they do, but don't forget this. They also had a pretty, I believe it was last year, solid signing class of guys that some of them are going to get on the field. I mean, Gage Ginther, Max Anderson, and William Sadoway, Dave. I know they're not starting this year, but let's be honest. They're not helping the depth issue this year because they're true freshmen, but we expect all three of them to be solid linemen in a year, right?
I feel good about Satterwhite. I don't have a good feel in the other two. I'm not doubting them. I know Satterwhite's going to be a player. I know Larry Johnson III is going to be a player. I don't know the other guys, but I'll ask around.
Okay.
Give you as much insight as I can. So let's take a look at the 2024 class that you're referring to. Who all did they bring in? I'm gonna pull that up. I'll remind you, it's brought to you by Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Work Trucks, all about trucks and the trucks you need. If you don't mind pulling that up, Caleb, Work Trucks with an X. Man, trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle available. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks with an X saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for work trucks, cargo vans, utility body trucks with an iPod work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Truck supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. Remember, Work Trucks, that's a fact. Service industry Work Trucks. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. They've got the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville and downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online to worktrucksllc.com. Worktrucksllc.com. Work Trucks, I'm telling you, have you fit to a T. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. So when I go back and look at Tennessee's latest signing class, the 2024 signing class, you mentioned some of the guys that, to be quite frank with you, I don't have a great feel for yet, with the exception of Satterwhite. But I think you also have to keep in mind that Tennessee can supplement. Now, the Lance Hurd situation hasn't gone as planned to this point, but I think Tennessee's one of those schools that will have the cash to supplement. And I believe the haves and have-nots, there's going to be a disparity between those two. And there's not going to be a lot of teams and programs that can go outbid an LSU guy for their own guy. And I know that Hurd wasn't going to start. I guess long way of saying, if this is a big miss in UT's coaches' minds, which I don't think it is, they expect it to be coming. They didn't go all out to save him. I think they did their best. But I don't believe that Tennessee should be overly concerned because they're one of the schools that have cash to go out and pick up a transfer.
Here's why they should be concerned. They signed 5 offensive linemen in 2024. 3 of them 4 stars on 247 Sports composite. How many? If William Satterwhite's the only one that works out from that group, Dave, that's a fail. That's a huge fail, quite honestly.
I
And
want to be clear though. I'm not saying that's the case. But I do know that based off people I talked to, that guy's going to be a player, and they feel comfortable as you can about him stepping into Coop's shoes next year.
okay, so they're going to throw him in at center next year, William Satterwhite.
Yes.
Okay, so which is a great sign for them. But if these other guys don't step up, then that's just more misses by Heupel up front. Now, a guy like David Sanders coming in next year, that's a guy you don't miss on, right? That is I do the whole our wives could look at him and be like, oh, he could play football in the SEC.
Yes.
And that's David Sanders. But I mean, again, there is still evaluation required beyond those top guys. And they're not evaluating them well at this point. They haven't proven they can evaluate well. Now, you're right. Get the proven guys in the transfer portal, but how often does that work out? I mean, I think about it in the NFL. You can't build it. You can maybe build a Super Bowl championship team through free agency one time. You can't build a dynasty through free agency, though. You got to build that through the draft. And I think it's the same with recruiting.
Well, we'll see what Ole Miss does. I mean, I agree with you, and I think it's blown up in some people's faces, UNLV. But let's see if Ole Miss is able to pull it off.
I mean, one, if Ole Miss does pull it off, Lane Kiffin won't stay there, so they won't be able to pull it off because then they'll go to Florida. And why would Lane Kiffin waste his time with the transfer portal in Florida when there's a little radius of about 20 miles where he can just build a national title team that way? Although, I don't know. Maybe that's only Miami. But no, Central Florida, you can still get national title talent out of there, right?
Yes, I think you can get right now. I think you can still get talent out of anywhere. Those guys rarely, because it's such a an odd area of people moving in, that they rarely have huge allegiances to one school or another.